it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Her Success Story, where we hear stories from dynamic, insightful women who have some major guts. And today I have to tell you, I'm going to introduce you to a woman who has some real major guts, and she has quite a story to share and some amazing accomplishments that she has done based on her life. Her name is Rosie oh my goodness, Rosie Aiello. Rosie Aiello, and she, you know, it was like we were just kidding around and talking about it. Aiello, like Italian. It's a good thing of spumoni. Yes. But Rosie, honestly, oh my goodness, it touches my heart. She was trapped in an emotionally, mentally, financially abusive relationship for nearly 25 years. She engineered an international escape from the Middle East to save her daughter and herself from a domestic violence situation. Nearly mentally destroyed and stunned by PTSD, within a few short years of rising back home in the state of California, she became a speaker, a best-selling author, an internationally award-winning entrepreneur. Today, Rosie's programs now empower women to find their voice, worth, and confidence so they could create a joyful, productive, and fully expressed life. You know, Rosie's no slouch. She's brilliant. She has a certifications in NLP, life coaching, executive coaching, timeline dynamics, as well as no short feet, holds an MBA in finance. Rosie's journey, along with her daughter, they've written a book which is their memoir called 11 Hours to Freedom. You're going to find all of this in the show notes, so I'm not going to hesitate a moment longer and introduce you to Rosie Aiello, as the Italians say. Rosie Aiello.
Yeah, there you go. I love it.
I do it from the New York Italian community. I do fine.
Yeah, I love it.
So welcome, thank you. You're an amazingly busy woman, and you found time to join myself and our listeners. So my heartfelt thanks for being with me today and being with all of us. Share, I mean, you're a California girl. How in the world did you end up in the Middle East in a relationship that went on for so long?
Well, probably like a lot of women, you know, you meet your sweetheart in college. So my former husband is Lebanese, but he came to the United States to do graduate studies. And we met at the University of California at Berkeley. And he was doing graduate work and I was doing undergraduate work. And we didn't get married right away. You know, actually I was in other relationships and, you know, so was he. So it was actually quite a few years, and he moved back. Actually, he moved to Saudi Arabia, but every year, you know, he would always call me or he would come to the United States to visit. And so we just, you know, kept in touch. And then one time, you know, we were both out of relationships and started to pursue things. And, you know, sort of one thing led to the other, where it was, as he said, it was cheaper to marry me than to pay for the telephone bills. Because at that time, there was no Skype, there was no internet, voice over internet provider kind of information. So
long distance was expensive back in the day.
It was very expensive, but you know, he had a doctorate in engineering. He was really bright, very cultured, charming. He had fantastic, you know, just being with him was just really exciting. And here I was working in corporate Silicon Valley, but then, you know, I left everything. I left my family, my friends, my job to live in the Middle East. And we lived in Saudi Arabia for about 12 years and in Lebanon, where he's from, for about another 12 years.
And you had your daughter, Sunny.
Right. Our daughter was born in Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm.
And what, you obviously, it's very, very difficult to be away from your family, your major support system, your friends. You were living in not just another country, but another culture, another piece, really part of the world. And without your own support system. So there's no surprise that the people who, when we can't always stand for ourselves, have insight to us and know us well, and they stand with us and for us. What transpired to then motivate you to say, no more, I'm leaving, or I escaped?
So, from the beginning, the relationship was off. And I have to tell you that I was married for 18 years before I even knew I was in an abusive relationship. I only knew that I didn't like the way I was being treated, but the way he presented it is like, if you only do better, Rosie, it'll be okay. Just apologize and do better. Well, of course, I'm competitive, of course I can do better. I'm fully, I'm a high functioning woman, right? I was, a star. And when I was working at corporate, I could do things. So of course I can do it. But, I just kept feeling defeated. And I read a book that sort of realized, oh, this is what abuse is, because mine was, it was verbal and psychological and financially. It wasn't, I didn't have hands around my throat. I didn't have a gun to my head. I didn't have these more obvious ones where you knew you were being mistreated. It was so subtle, and it was offset by really good things. So it's this roller coaster. And
so those highs and lows really throw us.
They definitely throw you. So what I've discovered, this is already a tip for some of your listeners, is that when you see the pattern of highs and lows, it's a red flag. And with those highs and lows on top of that, I started to make excuses for his behavior to myself, right? Because nobody else saw it. Only I did, or my daughter. So your original question was, what led up to it. And it wasn't until my daughter was in high school after I read this book, and then I said, we're not in a healthy relationship. Yeah. I realized it was me. And I said, what Papa is saying to you is not right. And that was the first time I started to validate her, because, as parents, you think, oh, well, parents have to be sided together. It's not against the child, but as a unity, right? So the child doesn't get
Parenting 101 is parents band together. We have to have the same message.
Right. So I had all these conflicting things going on, like, gosh, this is, I felt like I was conspiring when I was telling her privately. I says, how he's treating you is not right. But I knew by then, I was 100% sure after doing research that he wasn't treating her right. So I said, look, when you're ready, let me know. Because in the Middle East and in Lebanon, custody automatically goes to the father until they become major, until they turn 18. And I would have never, ever have left without my daughter. Now, I know when I say that, everyone says, oh, the movie. And I didn't know about the movie. There's a movie called Not Without My Daughter. I never heard of it until I came here, but it's natural for me because I have one daughter and I would have never left without her. And so when she was a junior at the American University of Beirut, so now she's already in college, she came home and she said, Mom, you just got to get me away from my abusive father.
So the same perspective and attitude that was coming to you, and the communication that was coming to you, was coming to your daughter.
Exactly.
And possibly seeing it through your daughter was also potentially an awakening for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when she was little, and I'm talking like from the age of 7 or 9, really little, she would see him picking on me. And I would never say a word because I knew that would just be adding fuel to the fire. And then he would just scream, and then he'd blame me for everything. She would defend me. And he used to tease her and say, oh, you're mama's little lawyer. But when she became an adolescent and started, her developing her own independence, he didn't think it was so funny when she had her own thoughts. Right? And then he just started to crush her and control her, exactly the same pattern. So she told me that was in April 2009, and we were already planning as a family a trip to the United States. We took an annual trip to visit my family and friends and his friends.
I was going to ask, did you come back to the States annually or occasionally or what?
Yeah, we did, because he spent a lot of time here and he had a lot of friends here. And so our trip was planned in July. So from April to July, 4 months, I planned the escape of our lives with a man living 24/7 in the house.
How did you do this? I know, don't give away your book, but just give us a tidbit.
It took a lot of planning. You know, I started to copy files and, you know, put them on flash drives. I asked two friends who lived in there in Lebanon, close friends of mine, to help me out. And mind you, up until that point, I'd been married now about, almost 25 years. Only 3 people knew what was going on in my life: my brother and my 2 best friends in the United States. I didn't tell anybody because I was so ashamed. Then I told 2 more because I needed their help. So I got their help. I started to sneak out things from the house to pack up. I was packing privately in my in the guest bathroom, you know, for things for shipment. I made these lists. My brother was helping me. He was absolutely instrumental, because on a scale, let's say 1 to 10 on stress, it was probably 110.
There's no surprise there.
You know, the stress, and he was getting more and more violent, you know, verbally violent. I mean, at that point, I was really scared to death of what he might do. And so I was really methodical. My brother and I planned what was going to happen. And I knew my husband didn't like to be embarrassed in public. So I knew that the only place was to leave him publicly. So when we landed at San Francisco International Airport, after I knew exactly where my brother was going to be, after the doors opened up, you know, after you leave customs, I knew I didn't have to look through the crowd. I knew where he was going to be. My daughter and I went behind my brother. My brother came to him and said, "Rosie's upset with you. She needs some time away." I couldn't even say then. I was so terrified that she's leaving you or that I'm divorced. It took me a long time working with therapy to be able to get my voice back. And then we just turned and left him standing in the airport. So
brave woman. It's a brave woman and your brave daughter. Brave 2 women.
Right. And I had told myself, I didn't know about mantras. I didn't know about limiting beliefs. I didn't know about any of that stuff. But what I told myself is that I don't have to be a martyr. I have one life to live, and I'm going to live it. My daughter and I deserve a happy and joyful life. And those phrases became my mantra that I said thousands of times as I was getting through this process.
You know, you're the story and yourself and your daughter are a huge inspiration and unimaginable from a perspective of how can you do this and the strength it takes. I want to jump forward a little bit because, you know, when I met you, I turned around and, you know, and I said, when I saw you today, it's like, you're just a stunning, vibrant woman. And you show up with joy and a vitality for life. And you have taken your life now back in the States. How long have you been back in the States?
Coming up on 9 years, not quite 9 years. Yeah.
And damn girl, what you've accomplished. Yeah.
I can't even believe it. You know, when you read my bio, it's like I'm hearing it for the first time. It's
Who
like,
is that crazy woman?
Yes. It's like, really?
So, you know, share with us. And I also, if you'd be willing to share a little bit, not that you have to share all your daughter's journey, but she's accomplished a hell of it. You've been so proud of yourself. You've raised an amazing, dynamic daughter as well. So start with you. Where are you today? And is some of who you've become and stepped into and made a difference with?
When I just really briefly, you know, when I landed here, I didn't know what I was going to do, but this is the honest truth. It was easier to create a business than to do my resume. So,
I actually get that.
so I thought, okay, I'm going to start a business. I had never done that before, but I can't write my freaking resume. And so I did, and I did what I was good at, which was time management, productivity consulting. So, to execute an escape, you got to kind of know what you're doing. So that's what I started doing. And I started writing blogs, and then I wrote a couple of ebooks, and then I got into some other books, and then one of them became a bestseller. And then I've been speaking. I mean, get me on a stage and I'm in heaven, right? I know people are afraid of speaking, but I don't know.
I've seen you in front of a crowd. You're damn dynamic.
Probably really, you're weird, Rosie, but I just did it. I got involved. I mean, I found that being alone was the biggest mistake I could have ever experienced. And it was like getting involved, meeting one person who led me to another person, who led me to another person. And isn't it how it is? And that's been really my success, is meeting all these women and men and connecting. And then what happened last year is that my daughter and I started writing our memoir. Just as a note, it's not quite finished yet, but lots of excitement around it. And then my life truly changed. That I'm going to cry. I wasn't expecting it. I've been getting a lot of requests from everybody that we met. Oh God, your story should be in a book. It should be a movie. It's like, oh, yeah. I mean, we heard that all the time. So we thought we'll do that. And we wanted to do it from the perspective of the wife, a mother, and a child, my daughter's point of view. So, which you don't hear very often, because you just don't hear it. I wanted people to understand the impact to the family, to the child that gets so hurt. So during that process, I got a hit that you need to start helping these women.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I did not sign up for that. I just signed up to write for the book, having this conversation, with God. I go, no. And he's going like, who are you arguing with, woman? I chose you. I'm going, no. So I just
You're right. I think that was the woman behind me, in line. and it's true. I've had the opportunity to meet amazing, dynamic people, and I think we've both been blessed in that way. And we're like, oh, those shoes are really big. I think you need the person behind me. I'm going to take the just one shoe. Thank you. One shoe. I'm good. And this calling, and yet we keep showing up, and we keep slipping on these two shoes and saying, okay, these shoes they're a little big. They're a little big. But you sure there's not a smaller pair, because I'm feeling a little big. They're like, no, that's really your size. I don't know where this analogy came from, Rosie, but
I love it.
Came through me.
But exactly, it was just like, and that's the thing. It's like, this is so big. This mission, we've created the Love is Kind movement, and why did we create?
Hold on, I want you to get that. I don't want that.
My daughter,
over, because we're talking. Both of us are talking pretty quick. It's the Love is Kind movement,
right?
And when you say it, and as I've heard you say it, it touches my heart. The Love is Kind movement.
Right. And we just created the Love is Kind network. That's going to be our overarching business. And what this is, this was inspired from by Mother Teresa. And she said, if you invite me to an anti-war rally, I will not attend, or something like this, don't quote me on it. But if you invite me to a pro-peace rally, I will be there. And I didn't want, even though my background and my experience is from abuse and I want to help women, that's not where I wanted to be. I wanted to be, what do we want? What should it be? What's the conversation going to be about? And yes, we'll talk about the abuse, but we're not going to sit there. I'm all about moving women forward, moving people forward. So it's about love is kind, not terrorizing.
That it's so important, in business, as we talk so often, we look at, and I actually spoke at a day on sales the other day, a sales summit here in New York. And, we're myself and the other speakers, we're trying to get through these people. Stop selling stop selling the tchotchke, sell the result, sell the result, sell the result. And like we're all using different languaging and different forms of communication to bang this message through to 100 people in the audience. And this is exactly what you're doing. It's, we can talk about the abuse, we could talk about the product, and that's all the middle stuff. But if we look at the result, that love is kind. Love is kind. Love is giving. So just so the listeners know, although you guys get the audio, Rosie and I have the joy of looking at each other and smiling at each other and having a damn good time during here. So I was sharing my flowers with her before we started. I was like, oh my God, look my beautiful flowers. And she's like, oh, this, and that's love is kind. It's the heart, it's the warmth. And that's the result of love, the kindness and that emotion. And business doesn't have to be hard. Life doesn't have to be hard. Love doesn't have to be hard. It can all be kind. And that your message touches me in so many levels, Rosie.
Well, thank you. And, just talking about my daughter too, as we've done this journey together, we were both diagnosed with PTSD. She's diagnosed with complex PTSD. And so she still struggles with that. But, despite that, she did, she finished her education here. She graduated with honors, and we are now in business bless you, my dear.
Thank you.
We're now in business together, doing this movement together, because we want to make this change. I believe really deep in my heart that when women and children are treated with kindness, they can show up better. They're more productive. They have a better life. They have more self-esteem. They contribute to society. We don't often talk about this, but this is a huge economic crisis, an issue. Because if a woman is down, or if anybody, if you're being diminished, can you show up fully? Can you give and do your best? You can't. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a professional, a mother, and your children are watching you, and then we keep producing these. And sadly, my daughter saw a woman who didn't have confidence. She just saw me being diminished because I knew my survival was to not talk. I didn't fight back because it was not going to be successful. I already knew that. So she saw this woman just not standing up. Is that the model she should have had? I mean, she has a great model now, I want to say, but
she does.
But your impressions are significant when you're a child, right? And so now to overcome that, and we're so passionate about helping create that in the family so the children can grow up mentally healthy.
And, when I do my work about, women and money, and I do work just around money and talking about money and shifting it to understanding that it's a tool and it's not the end all be all or anything else. 100 years ago, you and I might be trading eggs for cloth.
Right.
It's very straightforward. I have a dozen eggs. You have a bolt of cloth. I'll give you a dozen eggs for the month. I'll get the bolt of it. Very clear cut. And then all of a sudden we have all this emotion around things. And when we cut through it all, one of the things I say is what we learned from our parents when they had no insight of what they were teaching us. And I think this comes into many, many categories of which you're sharing some, what our children learn from seeing and hearing and being part of a family. And there's a lot of blessings out there. And there's some things that, wow, I didn't realize I did this to my kid, or that I exposed my kid this way. I had joked with my husband at one point and said, there was something going on with our son. He was slower in developing in certain areas, whatever. And I said, you know, when he's on that couch one day, it's going to be about us. And, and he goes, and yes, we, you know, but we don't realize what, you know, when we're living our lives and it's every day and we just doing what we do every day and get up and make breakfast and get up and take care of the family and get up and do any work we're doing. And all the other subliminal messages that are being taught in that environment.
Yeah, that's so true. And I've learned, my daughter and I have always been super close, but as we're writing this memoir, I've been discovering things about her that I never knew, you know, and things, you know, start to come up, you know, as you're writing, then memories come up. And one thing that just, you've heard the saying that children know more than you think they know. And it's just, it's so true, because when she told me, she goes, yeah, Mom, I remember overhearing, you know, I was like 5 and I was on the balcony, you know, we had like it's an indoor balcony in like a 2-story house. And I could hear you, you know, Papa yelling at you in the kitchen. And she goes, and I was so afraid. I thought he was going to either kill you or kill me. You know, so she had such terror around what was going to happen to me. And that's pretty frightening for a child, because they're thinking at a 3, 4, 5-year-old level. They don't have the capacity to understand, oh, well, this is an argument and, you know, maybe it's gotten a little bit out of hand or whatever. They'll create the scene that matters to them at their level of understanding. So that has a long-term impact. And then as an adult, I've spoken to women all over the world. As adults, as we go into adults, they don't have healthy relationships. They don't stand up for themselves. They have confidence issues still. And maybe they shoved it back, but they're not showing up.
Get it. So quick question that I always like to ask. In the weird place you are today, has there already been, what surprise, and looking back in the last few years, any surprises that have jumped out at you?
Well, other than the right turn that I made in my entrepreneur life, that was huge to really step up and say, this is what I'm going to do. You know, I'm going to help these women, because I fought it, because I didn't want to be in the world of abuse. You know, I didn't want to be considered.
That was behind, right? That was behind you. You wanted to live, and you didn't want to be as yourself. I
didn't want to be called a victim. I didn't want to be called a survivor. I didn't want to be called. It's like, I don't know. I just want any of those labels. Yeah. And now it's like, I will spend my last penny, you know, supporting this movement. It's like, don't get me, you know, you can't pull me off the train that's going 2,000 miles an hour.
And I'm with you. So remember, so the movement is called Love is Kind. Rosie, share with our listeners how they could learn more about you at the Love is Kind movement, and we can jump on this train to shift what love is in the world and join you in the movement of Love is Kind.
Well, couple things. I would love for them to join the group. So it's the Facebook group, which is called the Love is Kind movement, to join that and get in the conversation and to see, because our mission is we want to create Love is Kind ambassadors all over the world. And to get more information about the memoir that's coming up and to get more key things, they can go to 11 Hours to Freedom, which is the name of the book, 11hourstofreedom.com/gift. And there'll be a free handout for them, a little booklet to teach them how they can ask for what they want with confidence, because this seems to be a chronic problem us women seem to have, and it gives a lot of tips. I
love that. A resource that gives women tips on to ask for what they want with confidence. That's golden. Thank you for writing that.
Of course, you know, because I had to go through it myself, right? And it's still a practice, right? We need to practice everything.
Definitely want to check out Love is Kind. And remember also to take a look at Rosie's book. 11 Hours to Freedom. Everything is in the show notes. So if you're scribbling, don't panic. All the resources, we have them here for you at Her Success Story. Rosie Aiello, thank you for your openness, your honesty, and your willingness to step into these shoes and lead women to embrace kind love in their hearts and their lives every day.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you and your listeners.
And ladies and gentlemen, for Her Success Story, we have some great back issues. In June, we just did a wonderful series with some great dads, successful men who are also dads. Also, you want to subscribe so you know what's coming up. And we have more dynamic women and a few good men joining us on Her Success Story. Thank you again, Rosie Aiello, and we will see you next time.
Don't need your approval anymore, 'cause I've got mine.